Jack, this is your new guy.
We're here tonight with the library, and we'll have the police department after them. And so I'd like to welcome Will Adamski and right here, and Chris Hodlin at the other end of the table, the head of the Board of Trustees for the library. And we also have quite a representation of the board, maybe all of them: Hyacinth Cricklow, Brendan McLaughlin, John Folcarelli, Frank Schroth, and Reyes Wakil. And we have a select. Good to see you, Dennis. Okay. Without any further delay, I will let Will get on with the show, and you can tell us about the changes in the library this past year.
Thank you, everybody, for having us here tonight, and I'd like to thank the members of my board who are out to support the library tonight. Again, my name is Will Adamczyk, and I'm your library director. I'm just starting my third year at the library, and it's been a fun, fast 2 years that I've been here. I'm going to go through, hopefully not take up too much of your time tonight with our presentation, and then we'll have some questions, I'm sure. The presentation is going to be broken down into roughly 5 parts. We're going to talk about where the library is today, where we've come from, a look back at fiscal 14. We're going to talk a little bit about collaboration. This is something that's been an emphasis for the library over the past couple of years, this year in particular. Collaboration with town departments and collaboration with other library organizations. Then we're going to talk about state aid. State aid is something that we talk about on an annual basis. This year, the library is in line to receive $32,000 for fiscal 15 in state aid to public libraries. This is our first significant increase in a number of years, and that's a good trend to see that the state aid to public libraries is increasing. Finally, we'll get into the budget scenarios. We'll talk about the 3 different budget scenarios that we prepared for you tonight, what they would do and what the impact would be for library services for the town of Milton. And then finally, we will talk a little bit about the goals for the library based on our strategic plans, and then wrap it up with how those goals would be supported by the different budget scenarios. So, everybody hears me okay? Mm-hmm. All right, great. Thanks. The library is a vital part of our community. For lack of a better term, we've become a community center for Milton. We're not just about books anymore, although we are really about books as well. But library is something that's used by all groups of people, all ages of people, for any number of different services. Like I said, we're more than just books. We're also the town's blockbuster video. The second most used thing in our library are DVDs at this point. Almost 1/5 of our circulation is DVDs, so it's a little bit different than tradition. We're also where your students come after school. On any given day, if you walk in at 3 o'clock, you'll hear a dull roar coming from the second floor. And that's going to be 20 to 30 to 40 Pierce students usually who are upstairs in our teen room. But we also have students from Fontbonne, Milton Academy, the high school, all the different schools in town coming in after school to work on projects or to just have a safe place to be after school. We're also a place that people come for free concerts, free speakers. Tonight we're all missing Ty Berg give his annual Oscar preview at the library. It's also a place for story times, children's programming. The library is also a computer center now. We have roughly 40,000 public computer uses in a given year. We have free wireless access. We just upgraded our Wi-Fi hub, so we have a pretty strong Wi-Fi access at the library. We're also a meeting place. It's where the Girl Scouts go to meet. It's where the soccer board goes to meet. It's where the women's club meets. So many town organizations are able to utilize the library facilities for their meetings. So taking that all together, we're not just a traditional check out books library. We really have become a community center for Milton. Just looking at some of the metrics we have, you know, we're checking out over 26,000 books, DVDs a month. Over 50 items are downloaded a day, and that could be an ebook, it could be music, it could be a magazine, but over 50 things a day are being downloaded by Milton residents from library services. People come in and ask almost 300 questions a week up at our reference desk. You know, questions could be, you know, is there any historical significance to my home, to I'm writing a report on Thomas Jefferson. So 300 questions on average for a week. Looking at the whole year, we had over 530 programs. And again, those run from Ty Burr tonight to we're going to be holding an Olympic, children's Olympic event to go along with our Milton Reed's title, which is Boys in the Boat in March. We had about 4,500 people visit us every week. So people are coming through the door at great rates. And then just as a point of information, every book that we bought, every new book we bought in fiscal 14 went out on an average 18 times that year. So those books are getting used quite a lot, especially when they're newer like that. You compare that to every new DVD we bought was going out about 26 times over the year. And that's, I think, pretty impressive. And we've done all this with a pretty lean staff, lean services. We were able to utilize self-service functions at the library. More than a third of all people checking out books are using self-service stations, so that's been a really big, efficient cost saver for the library. Another thing that we've been doing more and more is we've been going more virtual with email and social media. We've eliminated postage for many things and those associated costs with mailing out overdue fines and things like that. Almost all of it is digital now. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the 5-year growth of the library. As we all know, we have a lovely new building. It's going to be turning 6 years old, believe it or not, in April. And these are just some stats to compare where we were when the new addition opened back in fiscal 09 and where we were in fiscal 14. So you could see significant growth across the board in everything I've already mentioned tonight, which would be traditional circulation of materials to programming attendance, reference questions, and so on. The one thing that hasn't grown to meet the growth we've seen here has been our staffing. In that time, we've only gone up 1/2 of a full-time employee. A lot of efficiencies were built into the new building, one of which is our automated materials handler. That's the fancy machine that when you return a book, it checks the book back in and sorts it into bins. That saves us staff members, FTEs, every year. And another thing is the self-service checkout. We're reaching the point where those efficiencies are being maxed out, and that we need staff in order to keep up with the demands of our residents. So I said I was going to talk about collaboration. This is something we've been working on since I've started at the library and even before that. This year, one of the things, I'm going to talk about town IT, I'm going to talk about the Consolidated Facilities Department, and I'm going to talk about the Old Colony Library Network specifically. This year we began a program with the town IT where we tried to begin consolidating services with town IT. Traditionally the library had their own internet or computer service provider. The town has theirs, the schools have theirs. So we started meeting with Jim Scroy and Rob Mallett and talking about going forward what would be the best way to work together. So we've changed our service providers at the library. We now use GDS, which is the town's service provider. And that's been really beneficial for the library. It's more cost effective for the town going forward because we'll be able to bundle some of our services. But it adds another layer of support for the library staff. We don't have an IT librarian. We don't have a computer specialist librarian. So if we have an issue, instead of having to call out to a service, we can call Rob, we can call Jim, and that's kind of our first level. And GDS has also been very responsive since we've started using them in fiscal 14. They've also been very helpful. It's another level for me to talk to as far as computer upgrades, technology upgrades. Last year we received $25,000 in capital money to start the first phase of technology refresh. So we worked with Jim and GDS to implement the first phase of that this year, and that's ongoing right now. So that's an example of how we've been able to utilize town services to make a more efficient library and more cost effective too. I can't say enough about consolidated facilities. Bill Ritchie does a phenomenal job for the library and for the town. Bob Mayhew, who works with him, and Jim Egan specifically, who does a lot of the HVAC work for Consolidated, have saved the library and the town countless sums of money over the past year, as far as we're concerned, at the library. They deal with HVAC issues for us, of which there are a number. They deal with any grounds issues, so they've been out shoveling constantly for 3 weeks. They deal with any lighting or electrical issues. And these are all things the library used to have contracts for. So it's cost effective because we're not paying labor. We get more immediate service. Bill always answers the phone. We don't have to wait to hear back from a 1-800 number to tell us that when they're coming out. But they can deal with just about any building-related issue. Specifically, one of the issues, for instance, we're heated with heat pumps. If you look at our budget, when you've looked at our budget, you'll see we have what looks like a pretty astounding electric bill. And that is because we're heated using electricity. We have heat pumps for our heating system in the library. So it's not that we leave the lights on, it's that we need heat on these cold nights. So these heat pumps, there's 35 of them in the building, and it's efficient because you can heat the sections you want, but they are not always reliable, and they can be, a $4,000 job to repair them in the past. And we actually had 2 heat pumps go this past year, and we got a quote Bill got the quote from the people he uses. Sometimes you have to remove them from the ceiling or whatnot. And for example, we were quoted over $4,000 to repair one heat pump, one heat pump, a $4,000 for another. Well, Jim Egan and Consolidated was able to get into one of the spaces and repair one for $250. That's all it costs for the new motor. So that is one example of how they've been able to save the money for the library in the past year. Bill also negotiates most of the maintenance contracts. We're operating with elevator contracts, chemicals for the HVAC contracts. There's a number of contracts involved with the library. He's worked more collaboratively with us, with the board, talking about long-range planning and capital improvement planning for the library. Thankfully, it's still a new building, so we're not looking at anything significant for capital as far as the building goes. And like I've already mentioned, they're very responsive, very supportive of the library needs, and they're always there when we need them. So it's cost savings, labor savings, and time savings for the library. I'll mention the Old Colony Library Network. This is, there's 9 networks in the state. Old Colony is the one on the South Shore in this area. It's about 30 libraries. There's a couple of college libraries in there. And what it is we're able to share collections. So if you go to the library, you're looking for something more obscure, we might not have it, but Braintree does. They'll ship it over to us, and we can pick it up in our library, for example. It's cost savings because we can do group purchasing of materials. That's why we're able to negotiate cheaper prices for hardcover books. We're able to collaborate to offer digital services at a reduced cost rather than trying to go it ourselves. They provide staff training, technical support as far as all the online services that we offer. And they do provide some long-range planning support. They also allow us the opportunity to talk about new trends and technologies in libraries. So they've been, if we were to try to have our own library catalog, without them, it would be cost prohibitive for the library. I don't have a slide for it, but MLS, the Mass Library System, is also something we're a member of. I just finished my term as president of that, and what we do is basically provide the shuttle service for the books. That's on a big picture level. They're the organization in the state that provides the books going from town to town. So if somebody returns a book in Boston, it finds its way out here. So there's a couple of library organizations we belong to. Next, I'm going to get into state aid, and I'll go as fast or as slow as you want, but basically, there are things called state aid standards for libraries, and that's what got us our $32,000 for this year from the state. And what we're primarily concerned with tonight is the MAR. Of course, they made the abbreviations as close as possible. MAR, which is the Municipal Appropriation Requirement. What that is you figure the average of your last 3 years' appropriations and average that, multiply it by 2.5%, and that's the minimum requirement. These are all minimum requirements for appropriations for libraries. The MER, which is the materials expenditure requirement, that's based on population. So with a population of roughly 27,000, Milton needs to spend 13% of our budget, of our appropriation, on materials. So those are the two big numbers. Other numbers include hours open, which we're doing well with our hours open. The hours open for a library in Milton would be 59 hours, and right now we're at 64.5 hours. There are other smaller requirements involving, number of professional librarians, but these are non-budgetary at this point, so I don't get into those for you. Looking quickly through this, we figure the MAR for fiscal 16 is $1.24 million, and that's the municipal appropriation requirement. In each of the budget scenarios that we have will be presenting tonight, we have met that number. This is how we get to that number. We take the appropriated budget for each of the past 3 fiscal years. We add to that the revolving fund monies that were spent in each of those years. You come up with the total. You take the total, and then you average it. Comes out to roughly 1.2, and then you multiply it by the 2.5%.
You will?
Yes.
You're increasing it by 2.5%. You're not multiplying it by 2.
I'm sorry, yes, you're increasing it by, thank you. Increasing it by the 2.5%. Thank you. So that's the municipal appropriation requirement, MAR, versus the MER, which is the materials expenditure requirement. And again, what you do is you take your appropriated budget, you take your revolving account, you total that number, and 13% of that number needs to be expended on materials. Now, materials could be books, DVDs, they could be online databases, they could be e-books, whatever material it might be. And these are the scenarios for the MER for fiscal 16 and fiscal 15. So in each one of the 3 scenarios, there's a small deficit to that. So state standards, what basically it comes down to is you need to have the materials that people want. With an increased emphasis on digital collections, that's driving costs up a little bit, which I'll talk about in a minute. But there's a correlation between having materials and having people use the materials. It seems pretty logical that if you're going to have things that people want, they're going to come and use them. And we see that by ordering new books, and they're going out 18 times a year. And annual circulation is what measures that for us. So the more materials, the more selection, the more circulation. But one of the things we're coming up against now is somewhat of a digital divide, they're calling it in libraries. And it's going to affect us in a couple of ways. The first, and this isn't going to affect us this year, I just want to introduce this to you, but right now our materials revolving fund is based on people paying overdue fines, people paying for lost materials. Right now there's no mechanism to charge or collect overdue fines for e-books. Everything is, you check out an e-book, it's available to you for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, it disappears from you can't access it anymore. There's no overdue fines for that. And that's not something we have control over. It's something that the network system service that we provides us, and we don't have control over that. So as digital circulation continues to increase and become a more significant part of our overall circulation, we're going to begin to see a decline in the monies collected by this revolving fund. It's already slowly starting. We are not in danger for fiscal 15 of this happening. I don't anticipate there being a large divide in fiscal 16, but this is something that we're going to need to talk about in the future as ebooks continue to become more ubiquitous. We're going to have more of a deficit instead of excess monies in a revolving fund. And the other thing I wanted to talk about real quick was ebook pricing. Most of us think that ebooks are pretty cheap, they're pretty quick, they're pretty easy, you know, $9.99 for a Kindle book or something, which is true if you're at home and you're downloading it yourself. Right now, the publishing world is such that they don't really know what's going on with where ebooks are going, and therefore they're charging libraries significantly more because they're afraid they're going to be losing business. Traditionally, we can buy a new hardcover book for $12. That's our average cost for a hardcover book. Right now, the average cost for a new ebook is roughly $38. Some ebooks go up into the 80s, $80 for one ebook. So there's a big disparity there for libraries. And the other issue is we don't own the book. Once it goes out 26 times, we have to buy it again. Whereas you can have a new bestseller go out 50, 60 times. As long as the binding holds up, we can keep it on our shelves forever. So this is coming when reading is up, people are using print books still. We have to try to meet the demands for our ebook users, and it's becoming not cost prohibitive, but we're making careful choices about what we're selecting for ebooks and print books. Sure.
Question? Is that the same thing with audiobooks as well?
Yes. Yeah.
Audiobooks and learning ebooks.
E-audiobooks we're talking?
E-audiobooks.
E-audiobooks is the same thing. They're actually audiobooks are more expensive than print books, and e-audiobooks are more expensive than regular ebooks.
Yeah. I'm saying, because I know when I go looking online for different audiobooks and stuff there, I'm like saying, it's not, you know,
Yeah.
it's not as many there or stuff
Right.
like that. And
So there's two issues there. One, they're more expensive. Two, all the publishers aren't making their books available to us at this point. So some of the New York Times bestsellers aren't available to libraries. They're only allowed through Amazon or Nooks or whatever.
Can the ebook only be checked out by one person at a time?
Yes.
All right, so that 26 checkouts is over a long period
It's
of
over
time.
a year roughly, yeah, right. We can have 3 or 4 copies of it, so 4 people could be reading the same one, but if they're treated as if they're physical books for all intents and purposes.
Thank you.
Steve?
So I could donate hard copy books, can I donate ebooks?
Not at this point, no, because we can't put them into the service that we have that provides access to ebooks.
Kevin?
Will, is the library prohibited from reselling new books?
The library, when we deaccession a book, if it's still in good enough shape, the Friends of the Library bookstore can sell them, or I don't know that. I don't know if the town could then resell the books.
In other words, if there was a bestseller
Right,
and everybody wanted the book,
right.
and you bought 100 copies, could you sell them?
We never have. I'd have to check to see if we could. I'm not sure. I'll tell you this. There's books like Gone Girl, which was a bestseller 3, 4, 5 years ago now. It's still on hold. I mean, people are like, so a lot of the bestsellers stay bestsellers in the library longer than they stay bestsellers on the New York Times, if that makes any sense. So by the time people are done reading them, nobody would want to buy them. Possibly. I know it's something to look into.
I don't think the bookstores would like it.
No, well. Yeah. Okay, I'll just talk about the budget scenarios now. You know, we prepared the 3 budget scenarios: the level service, the level dollar, and the reduced budgets. You the first budget scenario is a level service budget. It adds minimal staffing hours.
Would you like me to put the budgets up, or is we're
This-
still in the?
This is adequate for us right now, I think.
Great. Okay.
I'm not going to get into line by line in the presentation. But basically, this adds minimum services, staff, I should say, minimum staffing. It doesn't add any services. It adds a minimum staffing hours to try to meet the current demands of Milton residents on library services. It increases the materials budget to meet that demand, and it adjusts expenses based on fiscal 14 expenditures and current 15 expenditures.
Can I just interject
Sure.
one thing? For those of you on the warrant committee following along on the budget itself, the line that says new equipment, let me remind you, that is the books and material line. That's new equipment for the library, basically. But we adapted the general template to fit the library situation.
In previous years, our template had a separate line for materials and a separate line for our OCLN membership. So we were able to put that in the
Contract.
contracts, right? So, level dollar budget maintains current staffing, maintains the current level of general expenses, which would put us in some dubious situations with some of our general expense lines, from library supplies to building supplies to general maintenance and buildings and grounds for the building. And it would leave us short of the materials expenditure requirement. A reduced budget scenario would eliminate Sunday hours at the library, and again, it would be the same cuts to general expenses, which would be maintenance and supplies for running a 7-day-a-week building. In this scenario, a 6-day-a-week building. So a level service budget would allow us to increase our staffing to meet the current demands. It wouldn't allow us to add any new programming, add any new services or hours. It would just meet the current demands of library services. It would maintain the current hours of operation. It would adequately fund our book budget. It would meet incremental increases to operational expenses from utilities. I'm sure you've all talked about the electric bills, to facilities maintenance, technology maintenance, etc. It'll closely meet all the state aid obligations. It'll be a little bit short, of materials, but it would be close enough.
Can you expand on that point? Why is it close enough?
Because one of the ways we're able to fill the gap is with donations, and right now we have enough money in gifts to the library that we'd be able to meet that.
And you're talking $3,000
We're talking $3,000, yeah.
at the end of the day.
Meets the goals established for fiscal 16, and it would meet the steadily increasing demand for collections and services. A level dollar budget, we'd be roughly $3,300 below the materials expenses. We would be unable to meet the growing demand for ebooks because it would be less of a materials budget. We'd have inadequate budget for non-contractual buildings and grounds maintenance. So, anytime one of these heat pumps go, and we've been averaging 2 to 4 a year, depending on the severity of it, it's either a $250 job or it could be as much as $4,000 just for that specific job. And we need to get, this is still one of the newer buildings in town. It's in very good shape, and we need to keep it in that shape. We would be short on, the basic supplies for running a library. We'd be short on barcodes for the library, books and labels and so on, but we'd also be short on paper towels and soap and things for keeping the building clean and functional. In the reduced budget, we would have to eliminate Sunday hours. This is one of the busier times of week, and it also would limit programming on weekends as a result. We would be below, again, the MER, we'd be unable to continue to meet the demands for our materials budget. Again, the same with the grounds and buildings and the library and building supplies. So those are the three budget scenarios in a snapshot there. I wanted to talk a little bit about our goals. The library has a long reach, sorry.
On those scenarios, Sunday being your busiest day, and on the difference between the level dollar and the 2%, under the level dollar, you don't close on Sunday, and on the 2% cut, which is really $25,000 different,
Right,
you'd close on Sunday.
that's correct.
That seems a bit severe of an action rather than just turn back some hours at other times, if that is your busiest time.
Right. The reason that Sundays would be eliminated, it comes down to paying people overtime for Sunday versus cutting a staff member for regular hours during the week. If we were to reduce hours during another day of the week, we would have to reduce staffing levels. And if we reduce staffing levels, a staff person on a particular day, we'd lose them at other points during the week. So basically, it costs us roughly $25,000 in overtime to run the libraries on Sundays. And in other scenarios, we'd have to cut more than twice as many hours at a different time during the week. And then we would have to eliminate staffing that we would need at other points during the week. Does that make... it's not something we want to do.
No, it just seems, like I said,
It's a
that
busy
there could-
time.
You could argue that it's being done in order to, force people
Right.
to make
I mean,
a decision.
it could be argued that, but we would have to reduce more hours than just the 4 hours on Sunday in order to make up the difference in cost for
Mhm.
staffing those hours.
Okay.
We've talked about that quite a bit,
Yeah, it's-
as a board, so.
Are there-
Losing a whole day would be, like Will said, quite a significant.
Well, Sunday is one of your busiest days.
It is.
And so on the face of it, it looks crazy to think about shutting down on Sundays versus, say, Tuesday.
Right.
Is there a union consideration here?
Yes, I mean, there's also, any change in hours is a union issue.
So you would have to negotiate that.
Right. The
Being
Sundays.
shut on Tuesday, you'd have to negotiate.
Right, we wouldn't
with
have
the
to
union.
negotiate Sundays, we would have to negotiate regular hours of work, because Sunday's considered an overtime situation, it's not a regular hour of work, so it would be an impact bargaining situation.
So you'd have to renegotiate your contract.
Right.
If you were going to close on some other day. That's an impediment to that flexibility. But anyway.
And also the requirement for how many hours that we need to remain open as well.
Right.
So,
Well, you're currently open 64 hours.
Yeah,
And
64
the
and a half.
requirement is 59.
Right.
So it'd be hard. You'd have to shut down for half a day on a weekday, and
Right.
who knows how that calculus would work.
Right.
And I think this year, we can safely say that for the difference of $24,000, which is what a 2% reduction in your budget would be.
Right.
That we can, and for most of the budgets, that we wouldn't have to go there this year. Now, if it continues snowing, maybe that's a different story.
Right.
But I think we're pretty, you're out of the woods on the 2% cut level. At least I hope, and we certainly understand that that's what the impact would be.
Right.
And it would be horrific to be closed on Sunday. So we got that. I do want to point out that last year we were able to increase your budget from level dollars.
That's right.
Above level dollars by 17,000 for the books and 25 for Sunday hours.
Right.
So we were able to do better than level last year.
Right.
This year we may not be able to. And it's tough. You're in, you know, you and the schools are sort of in the position of especially you probably, you know, increased demand without, I mean, if you grow 10% a year, well, guess what? General government doesn't grow at 10% a year. In fact, we're only allowed to grow at 2.5% a year. So that creates pressure on all the other little component pieces that, you know,
Right.
so there it is. Anyway, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. The other caveat too is that we were able to increase our revolving fund, which has traditionally been 65,000 to 85,000 to help meet the materials
Right, last year.
Right.
Last year. But basically, if you include that 20 and the 42 that we were able
Right.
to give, it's a $62,000 increase on your budget, which is about 4%.
Right.
Okay? And we were, you know, between the two elements, we were able to deliver that. Well, that's a lot more than 2.5%.
Right.
So, and you know, when you look at this budget, your level service is looking for about 140,000 more than last year's appropriation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, that's percentage-wise, that's about 8%. Okay, so that's where it becomes difficult. You may have the demand, I'm sure, I know you do. I've seen it. You may have the demand and the need, but it's hard to meet it.
Right.
I would say the only possible way of jumping a budget 8% is to have an override. So you know, stay tuned. Be ready, I guess. I don't know. But so that being the case, an 8% increase is just, it would be tough. Now, I know that last year you did use $20,000. Well, this current year you're planning on to use 20,000 that was sort of left stranded in your revolving fund to help meet the materials requirement.
That's right.
The level dollar budget would not require you to do that
Right.
for 16. However, you still have that resource because your balance was about 40,000, and
Right
you
now,
might want to look at it anyway.
So as of February 1st, we'd expended, I have it down the other end, but we'd expended roughly 30,000. We'd expended roughly 30,000 of our revolving fund as of February 1st, and we had get close to, like you said, 40 odd thousand in there. So we anticipate being able to spend the 85,000 from revolving, but we didn't anticipate having close to 20,000 over it to have again. That.
Yeah. I'm just looking at your balance.
Sure.
At the end of the last fiscal year.
That's right, yeah, and that's why we made that decision.
Which was 40.
Right.
And so on the face of it, if your revenue and your withdrawals are
Mhm.
roughly 65,
Right.
then you could withdraw an extra 20 for 2 years running.
Right.
But you'll have to be careful now because you just described that
That's.
the effects of the digital divide eroding your revolving fund revenue.
Right.
So you may not want to do that.
Right.
But you have a little cushion there.
So,
that's-
and
that's
we've.
a good thing.
Yeah, we've budgeted as 65 instead of 85 too,
Right.
because we don't anticipate that lasting forever.
Right. So at least this level dollar service doesn't require you to dip into
That's
that
right.
last little pot,
That's right.
which you may need to spread out over the next several years as your revenue drops.
Right.
So I don't know. I guess one question I have for you, Will, and first let me apologize for mispronouncing your last name. I had a friend with a different pronunciation, same spelling, remarkably. Anyway, I guess my first question is on your new positions that you're proposing in the level service.
Sure.
And these are a response to the need for more hours. And it makes a lot of sense to me, but I understand that one of them was not approved by the personnel board.
That's right.
Which, I mean, in my experience, and maybe it's because we only ever see the approved ones, but, you know, I never met a job the personnel board didn't like, so it was kind of a surprise that they didn't like it. Can you tell us why they didn't approve it?
I cannot tell you why they didn't approve it.
Ah.
And that's
They didn't
actually,
volunteer their logic to you?
we are awaiting a response from them.
Okay.
That is an open question that we've had, so in asking Anne Marie Fagan, what is the purview of the personnel committee, and what do they approve or not approve, and trying to understand why they agreed that the need was there but didn't approve it, if their purview is not budgetary. So we are waiting a response back.
Well, we don't think it's budgetary because we keep getting approved positions.
We didn't either,
Without
so
the
we're
money to
not,
fund them,
we're not,
obviously,
we're not
so.
sure what the answer is, so we're looking for a response on that.
Go ahead,
Can you
Paul.
tell us which position it is?
Yes, it's the reference library.
The reference library.
Part-time reference.
Okay.
Well, actually, the way they approved it was, they let us pick which one we wanted, which was another kind of
Oh.
question in our mind was, we'll approve two, and you choose which one. So, we just want to understand the reasoning behind
Right.
the approval.
So you should have asked for 4 positions.
We'll know better next
Seemingly.
time.
Is it the same union as the town?
It's a separate union.
It's a separate
It was
union.
it was a library union.
Okay.
And I just want to go back to one of the comments, and maybe Will can fill in as well, like, a lot of the increase from last year was to get the town to put their portion of funding of the library as well, and taking it away from, special donors or
Right.
gifts or whatever. So although it looks like, you're right, that the dollar increase, the percentage is probably significant, maybe more to some other boards, it was really to try to make us whole and say that the town should be funding the library, because it's a town service.
No, I
know we didn't go back to that on here, but so some people that weren't
philosophically,
here.
all of the departments are town services. And we would want to fund all of them that we can. You have most of them don't have a donor wing. You're lucky to have the Milton Friends and whatever else. But, and donor fatigue can set in, and your donors felt, last year I think you told us that they felt that the town ought to be picking up more of the slack. But that is something that changed over time. And I don't know, I mean, it's your budget is growing a little faster than some of the other budgets, because we've been able to, and you have the increased demand. But I don't think that's I don't know, I don't see that as a reason for not treating other budgets the same way. We'd like to treat all of them the same way if we can, but we were able to do a little bit more for the library.
And I'm not trying to distinguish us between other departments, I just, for those that weren't here last year, to understand a little bit of what that increase was, or the logic behind it, so.
Well, the logic behind it is that the town pretty much had to step up because the donors were fatigued. Otherwise, and we're grateful for, I mean, there are a lot of, the school department is the recipient of many charitable funds. Other departments, I think, get little bits here and there. The fire department got money for a grant. I don't think this town would run very well if it didn't have the level of, philanthropy directed to its own departments, that it does, and it's great. I don't know. It's every donor thinks that, you know, the town ought to do better by the department that they're interested in. You know, if a foundation thinks that, you know, they'd like to do something in the way of a field or you know, school equipment or something like that, they always want to see that the town is willing to step in and cover half of it or something before they want to commit. And that makes sense. You know, if I was in the donor's position, that's, you know, I'd like to see the town have some skin in the game. And we do, but we just only have so much skin. You know, that's the problem. So I don't know. It's, I mean, just getting the whole library built, you know, the new building built was a significant effort on the part of, you know, the charitable nature of everybody in the town. And so in a way, yeah, I can see how a lot of people would think, look, we got you this building built, now take over and run it properly. And we would, if we could. But your demand is outstripping 2.5%, and it's outstripping our abilities to do anything significant in the way of growth unless there's an override. We're overdue for one. Next year, we should definitely, you want to position all these positions for next year, because that's the only way it's going to happen. It's difficult to fund new positions while another department has to cut. So, that's tough. Lee Michael.
Just wanted to check to make sure, Will, did you get to finish your presentation, or was there more?
I have a few more slides.
Yeah, no, yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
But, Betty?
I have a question about your revolving funds.
Sure.
Are they restricted to just using them for materials and supplies, or could you use them for another purpose?
So we have two revolving funds. One is the materials revolving fund,
Mhm.
and that's the larger one. It's at 85 max right now. That is only for materials.
Okay.
We have a second revolving fund, which is based on the leasing of our Kidder Library branch, and that revolving fund is for maintenance and repair of the building.
Okay. So you couldn't, like, repair a heat pump with revolving funds?
No.
Okay.
They're restricted.
And the revolving funds are funded by the late fees?
The materials is funded by late fees and paying replacement costs for lost items.
Right, okay. And then the gift accounts that's like the fundraising or philanthropic?
The majority of the gift account is $25, $50 donations in memory of family, friends, like that. Something that's not in the sheets is that, you know, we have a Friends of the Library.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
So the Friends of the Library, they don't actually give. It's basically, we have all these programs. We have Ty Burr tonight. We have children's programs. We have craft programs, things like that. The Friends of the Library pay for the programming of the library, and that is anywhere from, you know, $15,000 to $18,000 the last 2 or 3 years that they spend to have speakers and movie licensing. Staff are able to provide, you know, some of the programming preparation. They're able to provide some of the programs, but other times they'll pay for the Friends will pay for the concerts or the materials for them, and that's.
And that's not in here
That's
anywhere?
not in there.
You should make that a part of your present in the future, because I think that's important.
Well, you don't have direct control over
I mean,
those
But
it's
it's
not our
but
funds,
it's
right?
I get it, but that's where this comes from.
Yeah,
you know?
so
I
any
didn't
of the
know that.
programs I talk about basically are funded by Friends money.
And this is the second year in a row I've missed Ty Burr.
You know.
And I've already read The Boys in the Boat. So, Kevin is next, then Darnell.
Yeah, this might be for you, Chris, but Betty asked about the restrictions on the revolving accounts. I know there are some restrictions on the trust accounts, but could you just go over those with us? Are there any unrestricted trust accounts?
I guess unrestricted in the
Well,
general
for example,
fund.
I know that like the Hoyt Fund is just for the collections.
Yep, so many of the, the trustee funds were all private donations, mostly that were made either by organizations in town or private individuals. And you're right, some of them have been set up for specific purposes. The building fund is one, which is only for renovation or building expansion. There's a Buchanan Fund, historiography, only for research, is only specific, again, a specific area. There's two funds that I was going to say that the interest on those funds are only allowed to be used for materials, and that's another deposit that's made into the gift account, so we can't touch the principals of those funds. There is a general fund that doesn't have any real restriction on it. That's probably the only one that doesn't have any. The Stackpole Fund is only for Page scholarships. So we don't have a lot of, it isn't our purview to take that money and use it for operating purposes. They have specific purposes, and it's our job to oversee those and protect those, those interests.
And those are summed up by this line item here, gift accounts, materials?
No, they're
No.
not. The trustees are not part of the operating budget. They're in the annual book, so, in the
It's in the
annual
annual
report,
report.
there's a list of all the accounts, and their balances published on.
And the income from all those accounts you do use?
No, we don't. No, there's two specifically that we are only allowed to use the interest for book purchases. There's another fund where we can use it for children's book purchases. So they all have a little bit different, restriction on them. Some of them you can use the whole fund, some of them you can only use the interest.
So there's not a lot of flexibility or resource there for you?
No, not for the operating budget, no, there is not.
You said one of them was for the maintenance of the building? Or the renovation?
When the building renovation came, there was a large donation that was made, and that's a separate fund. And that has a restrict purpose for future expansion or renovation of the building.
Are you contemplating a future expansion or renovation?
Not today, no.
Uh-huh.
But renovations, I don't know, we're looking at parking situations. We have a lot of conversations that are going on right now to figure out what we're gonna do. So, those are monies that may be looked at for other reasons.
Yeah, I think you need to move that yellow house again.
Yeah.
We'd like to.
I got Mike and I got Darnell and then Mike, and then I've got the revolving fund question.
Yeah, another thing. Quick question, they have to have the 2.5% increase, yearly increase. Now, we have, with the consolidated facilities, and this is something that we're trying to match a couple of dollars here. There is an assessed value that you're getting from consolidated facilities that's not really shown here.
Mm-hmm.
If we can assess a value to that, is there a way that we can have that go to help close that gap in that 2%? Because now it's no longer part of your budget. The maintenance costs of the maintenance of the building is no longer part of the budget itself. Is there a way to assess some of those services that are supplied by consolidated facilities to help shrink that gap? So if there's something that would have cost you, an HVAC repair would have cost you, 15 grand to get done, but now it's not, or the pump that we're talking about, it would have cost you $15,000 to get done. There's a assessed value in getting that work done that we're not reflecting here. It's invisible. When we go to have to meet these requirements for this 2.5% increase, is there a way that we can assess some of those dollars into that formula to allow for, because these are stuff that would have to be done anyway, and that way we don't risk losing the $32,000 if we can't come up with that extra dollars here at this table.
Right.
And such, so are the ways that we can do this that will be, let's say, legal and kosher, and do it that,
Yeah.
as far as when we start counting those numbers, because I think those costs are, we do assume those costs as a town, It just doesn't assume those are costs through your budget.
Right.
Yeah, and stuff. So I wonder if there's a way that we can capture some of that.
Distribute the cost of that.
Yeah, capture some of that money, that's spent out elsewhere to support the library that might not be right on a spreadsheet, so that when whoever comes in to do your accounting or, auditing of that would say, okay, all right, yes, that's a cost that you did incur, and now we're not looking at a, 25,000, whatever it is, 30,000, number now is 15, maybe. You know what I'm saying? Is there something that we can do with that?
So there isn't currently something like that in their documentation for it, but there's a new state aid for libraries review committee. We've only met once. We're meeting again next Tuesday, and that's something that's on the table as a discussion topic going forward, but it isn't something that's currently in the formulas for them.
So my question would be, if we can put that in, we can say,
So I think the
we can truly
schools do
assess
something
that
similar to that, because they get assessed values
for different things that
for
are getting
library
done, yeah.
services to
Yeah,
schools
and-
as well.
So, I mean, there should be a way that we can
Right.
track some of those dollars just to help us meet
Right.
that burden, so that we're not sitting here at a table trying to find excess monies that we might not have
So,
to meet that.
so the burden isn't really so much the minimum appropriation requirement,
Right.
because that's, what is it, 1.5%? No,
No, it's 2.5%
2.5%?
2.5.
2.5, but it's
above the prior years.
But it's an average of the 3 years.
3 years, over the
Right.
prior 3 years,
So-
so it's still,
So it's really pretty easy for us to hit it, and we've been hitting it.
Right.
The difficult
30.
part is the 13% of your budget, all your appropriations has to be the book purchases, the materials. That's the hard one to run, because that goes up as the other part of the budget goes up.
so, but I'm saying,
So that's the hard one to hit, and so that's got to be a purchase of books and materials.
yeah, but I'm saying,
If you
even,
start adding in appropriations to consolidated facilities into the requirement to meet the, the minimum appropriation requirement,
That would
then you're
raise the
going to
book
boost the
budget.
book thing.
well,
so-
no, my thing is this, what we're doing is, I'm just saying defer money, so instead of spending hard cash on, consolidated, we just reflecting that service that's been supplied to the library. And this way, we end up with more hard cash, physical cash to spend on books. Because now you're saying, okay, in my asset column, I have $15,000 worth of consolidated facilities work that was done in the building that it didn't happen to come off my budget, but it was done. All right, so I didn't spend hard cash for that because it was spent somewhere else in town. Now I got $15,000 in my budget to spend on that book. So you just basically, if you follow it or you follow the thread, you're basically saving yourself some cash, because what you're doing is accounting for dollars that are in, that the town is spending on a library somewhere else. So you're not increasing your total budget number.
Right.
What you're doing is you're just recognizing money that's being spent elsewhere for the library.
Well, I think in general that every department that gets the benefit of consolidated facilities services should be recognizing, the value added to their department.
But this is this here department is the one that we have outside auditing
Okay.
running after us for.
Can I just
percent.
add
But
a comment
again,
here as well, though?
that's not an issue. Hitting the 2.5% on a 3-year average is not an issue. In fact, contractual, obligations for the staff will take you over to that number anyway. So unless you're going to contemplate firing somebody, it's not an issue, I don't think. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
That's all right. I mean, I guess it sounds like you're trying to have that be included in the calculations of
Right,
OMR,
it just be included,
so-
not include.
Which, I guess I can understand that somewhat, but, I also want to say, I mean, our budget would be a lot bigger if it weren't for what we've already done here and presented. So we're using the town's IT department, which you know, we're doing things to try to lower the costs. I mean, as the budget, you're
That's
saying the
good.
budget goes up,
Right, of
our
course, the
budget would have
IT
gone up a
budget
lot
goes
more.
up.
No, that's it, but I
The IT
understand
is
that.
one,
Facilities
and
goes
I
up.
think the consolidated facilities, I mean, and we took some money out of our budget to give to consolidated facilities. And we would like to see the other town departments do that, because we feel like we would all benefit, the library and other departments as well, if there were more departments using that consolidated facilities that would give you folks more money to distribute elsewhere. You know, we're looking at ways to try to help shrink the expenses that have gone up, which is in, you know, many, many ways. I mean, so,
We can get into this later, but I would love to hear about how you gave money to consolidated facilities. Was that 3 years ago, or?
that was,
It
I
was when
think,
the
when,
department was
when the
formed.
department was formed, there were line items that were taken out of our, you know, our budget to help fund it. I mean, they need a lot more funding, but, you know, we did take some of that.
And after you do that initial elimination of a line item to consolidated facilities, and your line item goes to zero,
Went to zero.
there's now no way to measure what the exact impact is on your budget, other than taking the consolidated facilities budget and dividing it by all the
Yeah,
departments in town
exactly.
that benefit from it.
Right,
So
right.
the problem, there's
So they would
probably-
have no budget.
So Darnell, probably there is no longer any kind of exact measure of how you turn it. I mean, everybody knows that various departments are benefiting from consolidated facilities, but I don't think there'd be any way to come up with some sort of exact figure that then could be put in as an equivalent into somebody's budget. I just, because once you've eliminated the line item, then that was your yardstick. That yardstick is now disappeared. So there's no way to measure it now.
If we can eliminate one.
Well, let's hope we never have the problem that we need to report grant
Well, as you limit,
appropriation
you can
from
put something back
consolidated
as a
facilities
note or
to
comment.
meet the state requirements.
There's no way to.
I don't think that's something
Mike.
we're gonna be able to answer here either.
Right, Mike?
Yeah, I was remembering back to the days when I was a library trustee, and the old building was there, and the old boiler was dying, and every month we'd have these meetings to sign another repair bill for the heating system and hope we made it till the warm weather. And it's kind of sad to hear that these new heat pumps are costing you that much money, $4,000. Have you actually had to spend $4,000 on one, or is it?
Yes. There's some heat pumps that the way the building was designed we have to physically cut into the ceiling and have it removed so it could be repaired. They can't be repaired in place.
Okay, well-
And it's those instances when we have to physically remove the heat pump.
So it's come up in other discussions here that right now interest rates are low. They've been low for 6 years. They're probably not going to be this low forever. Would it make sense to borrow some money to replace the heating system in the library so you don't, because your electric bill is going to be what next year, $80,000, $90,000?
Roughly 80 or 90, yeah.
That include the new rate increase that ends
That's
up?
right, that does.
Has anybody looked at that to see if it makes sense to get on a new kind of heating system?
No, we haven't looked
We
at
have
that.
not.
But I mean, we have a brand-new building, and we have brand-new equipment, and it, you know, you're in a lot of the facilities are HVAC, they're more expensive than they used to be. You know, we are looking at ways, you know, one of the things we're looking at now is solar again. We looked at that a while ago, and it's just, you know, we're continuing to look for other ways to help to reduce the costs that keep going up, so. I mean, we can take that under, you know, consideration, but we haven't had any serious conversation about replacing the heating system.
And the other thing that we've done is anytime we've had to physically do a $4,000 job, we then, when it's reinstalled, create access to it, so next time it wouldn't have to be
It'd
removed.
be a $250 job next time.
It would be a $250 job next time.
In fact,
Well, I guess we don't, the question was, are you looking at it? So if you do look at it next year, maybe it'd be a good thing.
Yeah, and we, you know, we've met, like Will said, you know, Bill Ritchie's come to our meetings, we have a financial subcommittee, and he's come and we've gone through all of our capital, you know, needs. He's gone over what I'm sure you guys have all heard of, preventive maintenance, you know, how much preventive maintenance are we doing on these brand-new buildings, and what needs to be checked periodically, whether it breaks, before it breaks, you need to make sure. So, you know, we're looking to develop our own 5-year plan to see what our budget will need, you know, what will be growing over 5 years. So we're trying to actively look at that and manage it as best we can.
And if I can ask a second question, just because I used to be a library trustee. How are you doing for storage space? Do you have any extra, are you out of space, everything filled up now?
We are, you're talking just the general stacks, just like?
Just general stacks, yeah.
Yeah, the book.
No empty shelves anywhere?
No empty shelves. No, all the shelves are full.
I heard this thing about a good way for you guys to make some money, which was in dealing in used textbooks. I
We
don't-
don't-
haven't thought of
Yeah, we don't have much in the way of textbooks.
that. Right, if you
If we-
told people in Milton, you know, your college could sell us
Oh,
your
to
textbooks
resell
in
them.
June,
Yeah.
and sell them in September, you might make 10 grand.
You might have to hire
We
somebody.
might need to
then.
hire some people
Right.
and.
Well, with all the
It's a whole
staff,
nother business.
you know,
Yeah.
if there's any place in town I could think of that could handle an influx of books, it would be the library. Anyway, no further questions, just
Anyway, just to follow up, Mike, on your question is about the heat pump. Bill Ritchie does have it on his consolidated facilities wish list. A couple items for the library, including,
I wish we never put heat pumps in.
He may have.
but including,
Electrical ones.
including constructing better access to these pumps.
Right.
My understanding from Bill is that these pumps were a last-minute, cost-saving redesign for the library. That something else more robust and whatever might have gone in there, but at the last minute they needed to trim something, and it was the heating system. So we ended up with an expensive to run and expensive to maintain, but initially cheaper heat system. So it's too bad, and at this point, the building is designed around it, and to retrofit a different system in there would be probably prohibitively expensive. Anyway, that's what I heard.
We don't have to solve that
So,
problem, now. Just
Okay.
look at it during the
And
year.
I'll just say too that, you know, the electric bill is significant because it does run the heat pumps, but, you know, we make up for it in a lower fuel costs because, you know, we have very limited amount of fuel costs compared to maybe other departments.
Right. But the electricity bill went up 35%.
It did.
So that's
It did.
that's significant. So can I get back to the revolving funds? Sure. The other one. My book